All right, boom, let's do this. Welcome to Money Talks. We got a lot to talk about. Let's get to it. All right, so we're going to talk about some price action. I got my list here. We're going to talk about latest on Abra yield. We're going to talk about interest rates. We're seeing some really interesting things going on in the interest rate front. We've got some interesting crypto news that I want to talk to you about.
All right,
we've got
let's do this.
Again.
Welcome to Money
Sorry
Talks.
about that. Get that out of here. We've got some demos I want to give you, and yeah, we've got some questions teed up already. So let me start out with a little bit of price action. So I've got a little bit of good news, a little bit of kind of neutral news here. So let's take a look. All right, so let me share the screen. I will bring up my chart. Let me see if I can figure this out. There we go. Okay, so, oh, sorry about that. Try once more. There we go. All right. So, so you see here, this is the Bitcoin hourly price chart. Now, as I said last week, when we were over here, if we go over to July kind of 2nd, we were exactly where we were a week before. And today we're exactly where we were a week before. So, you know, we continue range bound. This is what we call kind of an accumulation phase. If I zoom out to the daily chart, okay, let me make this more readable. You can see we've basically been unwinding in terms of volatility. It looks like we're getting narrower and narrower. We're at the kind of mid to lower bound of the range that we've been in basically since late May. Okay, so that's now, you know, almost 2 months, which means that from a potential energy perspective, the rubber band is starting to wind up pretty tight. Now, the good news, the other piece of good news for me is this has quickly become an interesting favorite signal for me. All right, this is Will Clemente, and if you don't follow Will on Twitter, I strongly suggest you follow him and subscribe to his newsletter. Basically, he's a college kid who has come up with some really interesting stats, and I use them a lot in trying to understand what's going on. Let me explain what we're looking at here. So the orange line is most likely, obviously, to you the Bitcoin price. The red line, surrounded by these purple bands, which we call Bollinger Bands, don't worry about that, basically tells us how much Bitcoin is going onto exchanges or leaving exchanges. In general, Bitcoin moving onto exchanges at a large rate is pretty bearish because it means people are likely going to be selling that Bitcoin. And the opposite is also true, meaning when Bitcoin is moving away from exchanges, it's usually very bullish because no one is selling. So if we go back to September to December of last year, things looked really bullish. And if you remember, you see this red line here in December. This red line is basically a sell signal. And we had a very short-term top here. And then we turned green again, which was a buy signal. And it was full steam ahead until April. And this indicator basically printed a red line here in May or late April, which was the first really strong sell signal that we had seen probably in 7-8 months, minus the short-term one in December. And we've more or less been in that kind of neutral to sell mode until now. So this week, because we saw about almost 18,000 Bitcoin on a net basis leaving the exchanges, some of it coming to Abra and other places, we printed a green line, which is a bullish sign. And this indicator, no indicator is right 100% of the time, but this indicator has been right almost like, I think he said 80% of the time, which is astounding. And so use this in combination with other signals, but this tells me, and again, we're not day traders here, but those of you who are looking for good entry points, you may have found one. Okay, I'm dollar cost averaging in pretty much every week now, which means I'm basically adding on a regular basis to my Bitcoin and Ethereum positions. But this looks like we could have reached a short-term bottom give yourself a little bit of room to the downside, but I'm telling you, this signal here is probably the most bullish of all the signals that I've been looking at lately. Okay, so that's where we are with Bitcoin. Some interesting news on the Cardano front. They're now processing or have more holders than Bitcoin on several exchanges. One exchange announced that in the second quarter of this year, they saw significantly more inflows into ADA Cardano than they did even into Bitcoin, which is astounding. We're obviously bullish on Cardano here. I think the smart contract upgrades are going to be really interesting. I look to see Cardano being used for stablecoins and some other potentially NFT and enterprise applications in the coming years. Cardano's been pretty flat since February, but massive run up, right? So if you go back to, late last year, the price went from 15 cents to about $1.30, which is, just an astounding, almost 10x or 8x run up. So I remain bullish on Cardano. The other thing we're hearing a lot about is Tron. So we'll take a look there. They announced that they've now processed, I want to say something, I think I read $100 million worth of USDC transactions. So you probably read about Circle's IPO. Circle, which is the company behind the Center Foundation, which is USDC, one of the stable coins that we support in Abra. That company is going public. And they're also making USDC available on multiple blockchains. This is really smart because as Ethereum gets congested, every time there's a run up in the price of Ethereum, many of you complain to Abra because the gas fees get really high. Well, there's nothing that we can do about this, right? The gas fees on Ethereum are a function of how congested the network is. And if the network is really congested, there's very little that we can do about it. Okay, so the best solution to that is multiple blockchains that will support the same stablecoin. In this case, TRX, potentially Stellar. I believe Stellar is going to be supporting USDC if they haven't started already, and other chains like I mentioned, Cardano, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm seeing some bullish signs here on several altcoins in terms of usage. Not much in the way of price action, but again, we're in this for the long term. So if you're holding Cardano, maybe TRX, Wax is one that I've talked to you about many times. That I remain bullish on. The NFT market is still pretty hot. So you see that Wax has gone from last year probably around 3 cents to somewhere around 12 cents. It may be undervalued versus the other cryptos. I don't know, but it's got a lot of traction right now. So let me stop this. All right, let me talk a little bit about what's going on the yield front. It's still, without a doubt, the most common question I get. Abra reset the dollar rate to 8%. We're paying 3.5% on Bitcoin and 4.5% on Ethereum. How do you guys determine the rates? And how are you generating the yield? And I get the same question a lot. So let me quickly kind of reiterate what's going on the yield front, and I'll take a couple of questions on that topic as well. Okay, so as you know, we have the best rates that don't involve a third-party token in the crypto space, right? So meaning if you deposit USDC or Tether, you get paid interest in USDC and Tether, right? And we're currently paying 8%, and we'll see. But what happens to the rates over the next few weeks? But right now they're holding steady at 8%, which is a phenomenal rate. I continue to have all of my cash, my liquid cash in Abra earning that 8%. So we effectively earn that interest for you in 3 ways. Okay, there is the retail lending, and that's when we lend dollars to you by giving us your Bitcoin or Ethereum as collateral. And we'll do some demos again to show you how that works. We do a certain amount of investing into DeFi now. So for example, we may take Bitcoin, turn it into wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, and that generates pretty high interest rates in certain DeFi systems. And let's see. And then lastly, of course, we have our institutional loans where we're lending to high quality borrowers. Okay. And that has been a phenomenal system for us. And that's how most of you have been able to generate that 8 to 10% interest that you've been earning over the past year. Okay. And that will continue. All right. So it's a blended system that generates yield across all of those. We pay out about 85%, right, of what we earn to you, right? And to be clear, now I got one of these questions about, is TUSD the only stablecoin we support? No, if you look at the screen, you can see that on the stablecoins, we support USDC, we support Tether, which is USDT, we support TrueUSD, which is TUSD, and we support Pax, which is, or Paxos's stablecoin. And we pay yield on all of them, and they all get the same rates. Today, they're at 8%. And so you can deposit directly in any of those stable coins. If you deposit from your bank account, by default, you're going to, in the US, you're going to default to TrueUSD. And if you deposit in another currency outside the US, you can always convert to TrueUSD or one of the other stable coins to earn the yield. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. On the borrow side, this is where things have been getting really interesting. A few weeks ago, as you know, we launched our first, or the industry's first, zero interest loan against crypto holdings. So what does that mean? That means if you deposit, let's say $1,000 worth of Bitcoin into Abra, or $1,000 worth of Ethereum into Abra, we will allow you to borrow $100 for free for up to 2 years. And your collateral will be locked inside of Abra for the duration of that loan. So that's a phenomenal deal. If you're a long-term holder and you don't want to sell, but you want to access a small amount of your gains, for example, and you don't want to pay any interest, this is the best way to do it. We have so many of you that have signed up for these zero interest loans, and it's just the beginning. There's some really other cool stuff related to those zero interest loans that we're going to be doing in the future, but check it out. It's super cool. It's become one of the most popular offerings at Abra now. And if you don't want to tie up that much crypto, you can actually take out a loan that does have an interest rate, and you'll be tying up a little bit less Bitcoin or Ethereum for the loan. So in the app, and I'm going to just switch to the app here. Let me see if I can share my screen on my phone. Let's see. So I'm going to basically show you how to apply for a zero interest loan here. So let's go for it. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if this works. Share, reflector. There we go. All right, Mr. Wizard, I think we've got the screen share going. Tell me if we don't, but I think we do. So, okay, so here's the Abra app. Here's my demo app. You see I have balance here, Abra Trade. I have a lot of cash in Abra Earn, and I want to borrow against some of that Bitcoin that I'm holding in Abra Earn. So I click the borrow button at the bottom of the screen, and it says I can borrow US dollars. So I click apply, and I'm going to borrow TrueUSD in case I want to wire the money out. Okay. And I click on, let's say I want to borrow $1,000. So I type in 1,000. Okay. I press continue, and I'm going to borrow for 24 months. I'm going to use Bitcoin as collateral, and I'm going to choose a zero interest loan, which means to borrow $1,000, I have to give about 0.3 Bitcoin to Abra to hold as collateral. Still my Bitcoin. I still get the benefit of the price going up. But while I have the loan and am paying zero interest, Abra is holding the collateral. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So I click on 0% interest. I click on apply. Okay, and I'm going to be shown a very simple contract, right? I agree to the terms. I can view the loan contract if I want by clicking there. I'm gonna scroll back, and then I click submit, which I'm not going to do right now because I'm not going to apply for the loan. But that's it. Okay, so once I transfer that collateral from Abra Trade into the Abra collateral into the Abra into the Abra borrow function, the USDC or TUSD that I just borrowed will be deposited directly into my Abra Trade account, and that's it. I have my $1,000. I can use it to buy more Bitcoin. I can withdraw it to my bank account. I can withdraw it to another wallet, whatever I want to do. Okay. All right. So let me stop that. Let me go to the questions here. They're piling up. So why does Abra only support TUSD, which is true USD, for withdrawals to bank accounts? Because we have to pay a conversion from USDC to TUSD. So good question. We will be adding at some point USDC directly to bank account deposits and withdrawals. So you can choose either USDC or TUSD. TUSD was just the first that we added directly to link to your bank account. But once you're in the Abra app, you can convert to and from any stable coins that we support. You can go from Tether to TUSD, USDC to Tether, and any combination, okay? But we will be adding eventually the ability, probably later this year, no exact date yet, but the ability to mint directly from your bank account into USDC, and the ability to go from USDC directly to your bank account. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Ryan asks, when do we expect California for Abra Borrow? Great question. So we have submitted our lending license to the state of California, and it shouldn't take that long. We just added, for example, Utah. We added Wyoming. They got back to us very, very quickly. So I think we're at like 43 states now. And we expect the other 6 or 7 to come online very, very quickly. And that includes California. I live in California. So I want this. If you have an LLC or a trust in another state, contact us either at support or trading@abra.com, and we can directly help you. So maybe you're in California, but you have like a Wyoming trust or a Florida trust. That's pretty common. We might be able to get you going now with a loan. So some of you who have that, there might be a way to borrow through your trust, for example, or through a personal LLC or something like that. Okay. So let's see. My question, why some coins don't have the correct exchange rate sometimes. For example, and I actually don't understand the question. So maybe you can clarify the question. I know our exchange rates are correct. So we always show you the rate as if you were selling to give you a very clear indication of what it's worth. Some people actually show you what it's worth if you're buying, and that doesn't really make sense because it's artificially inflating the price. So maybe that's your question. I'm not sure, but please clarify. Somebody says, Stanford Kim says, good morning, Bill. Just wanted to say I saw your video with Peter Peter Diamandis and Michael Saylor. You guys were amazing at answering such a variety of questions. Thanks. Super excited that Peter Diamandis, who's famous from the X Prize and Singularity, has joined Abra as an advisor. And Peter is an expert on kind of exponential growing technologies and has gone really deep on Bitcoin, blockchain, and where this is all going. And he and I spent a lot of time talking about where it's going and how to actually explain it to mainstream consumers so that everybody gets it and people really start to get more excited about where this is going. So welcome to Peter. And Michael Saylor and I have spent a little bit of time together over the last few months. And if you pay attention to what we call crypto Twitter, you're obviously all well aware of Michael's passion for Bitcoin. And I've really gotten to I've really enjoyed getting to know Michael, and he and I talk every once in a while. And he's a big fan of our zero interest loan product. That was something he came back to me and said he thinks that's killer. he puts it in the context of you hold the appreciating asset, which is Bitcoin, or to me Ethereum as well, and you borrow in the depreciating asset, which is dollars. And being able to borrow the depreciating asset at 0% interest is just awesome. Okay, let's see. If you have a specific question for a ticket that relates to an issue you've had in the past, let me address that. Okay, so we have added a huge number of support staff, and we are getting back to customers literally within minutes now. Okay, so if you're not getting a response on a support ticket, resend the ticket now. We are working through the backlog of older tickets, but if you're submitting a new ticket, you're generally getting a response literally within minutes right now. So that's super cool, and our quality of support has increased dramatically in the last few weeks. So kudos to the support team for the work that they're doing. RB asks, what's the benefit of Abra holding my crypto versus self-custody? So RB, the biggest benefit is that you can earn interest, right? So obviously the ability to earn, some people, 4 to 5% on crypto holdings is very compelling. I'll go back to the app here, and you can see the interest rates that we're currently paying, which is really cool. And so today, we're paying 4.5% on Ethereum, for example, 8% on dollar stable coins, 5.25% on Litecoin, 4% on Stellar Lumens, 4% on Bitcoin Cash. So look, if you're into crypto like I am, the name of the game is stacking as many sats, as much Ethereum, as much Litecoin as you possibly can. And so because I trust Abra implicitly, I know how the system works. I've explained it to you many times here on the show. I just explained how we generate the yield a few minutes ago. So at the end, you can scroll back if you joined late and didn't see it. But I only store my crypto in Abra now because I'm comfortable with how we generate that yield. It's very safe. We pay out 85% of the interest we generate to you. I don't know anybody who pays out that much. And so, it's a phenomenal solution. So Mediation Music says, I would like to ask one thing, if you don't mind. Of course, please ask your question. I don't see it, but if I do see it later, I will definitely answer. Somebody says, will you be adding Cardano ADA for staking? Get this question every single week. And the answer is yes, we will be adding it. We're waiting on a couple of our partners to get going with supporting Cardano, which I've been told that they're doing. Let's see. Lucy says you won't find a more, I just scrolled past it. I think it was something nice, but I think it was the most trustworthy and knowledgeable CEO anywhere. That's very kind of you, Lucy. Hope you're well. So let's see. Lori says, this is an important question. The owner died. I assume that means the owner of the wallet or account. Who do I contact for updating ownership of our Abra account? Okay, this is really important. So now, since somebody has already died, and my condolences for the death in your family, you have to contact Abra support, and they'll help you as best as they can. It's going to take a little while because if you didn't set up a beneficiary, we have to go through some proof process with the trust bank. Okay, but for those of you watching, do this now. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again and bring up the Abra app. Okay, so in the main menu here, right, you see on the second line down, it says designated beneficiary. Choose that menu option and specify the beneficiary with the exact name as on their ID to your account. Okay, so that if something happens to you and they can prove, like via a death certificate or something like that, that you've unfortunately passed away, they can take over your account. And it's not like just because you list them there, they can scam you out of your crypto. They can't do that. okay? Again, my condolences for your loss. Deeply sorry. In this particular case, you are going to have to contact Abra support at support@abra.com, and they'll see how they can get the process going for you, since you probably didn't have the beneficiary set up. I'm assuming based upon your questions, okay? And they'll also tell you, once you provide the proof of death, whether that person did have the beneficiary set up and who that beneficiary is, okay? All right, so hopefully that makes sense. So Chester asks, why do I have to borrow at least $3,000? That's a great question. So look, it's a little complicated, but every state has their own lending rules. And one of these bizarre rules is that people who borrow above a certain amount, we don't need a lending license in that state. And we're actually applying for lending licenses in all the states, which would get the minimums down to like $1. Okay, so Chester, I'm not sure which state you're in, but the reason is that it's set at 3,000 is that for whatever reason, that's the minimum borrow amount that we're allowed to offer in your state until the full lending license is in place, which is pending. Okay, so if you want to clarify in the questions which state you're in, I can maybe comment on that further, but I obviously have no way of knowing which state you're in. I assume it's a US state. Otherwise, I think the minimum is like $5 or something like that, or maybe like $100. Okay, so Apple co-founder Paker says Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak calls Bitcoin a miracle. Your thoughts? I kind of agree with Steve. Those of you who don't know who Steve is, he's the co-founder of Apple, and on my shelf over there, I have a really cool 50th birthday photo from Steve that he sent me. So we used to live in the same town. Look, I mean, I've said this for years. To me, Bitcoin is kind of the Sistine Chapel of cryptography, and after 10 years, we have had nothing that compares to Bitcoin in terms of its stability, its ability to generate consensus at global scale, worth $1 trillion. I think it's like at 700 billion right now. It's just astounding. So, all right. Mike asks, how come the interest was reduced from 10 to 8%? Mike, great question. This is all a function of the rates that we're able to safely and responsibly earn for you via the three methods that I described earlier. That's the retail lending, DeFi, and the institutional lending. That creates a blended rate that we're able to pay you. And 85% of what we earned there goes to you. And as those rates go up, our interest rates that we pay to you on dollars will go up again. So Pluto 5028 says, I can vouch for getting a reply within minutes. Well done, Abra. I totally agree. The support team is kicking ass right now. Look, some of you may not like the responses you're getting if you've been blocked or if you have ID issues, but they are responding very, very quickly. And their knowledge is phenomenal, okay? So some people are saying there are other startups that are offering very high rates that sound, unsustainable. Why are they offering these high rates, like let's say 12 or 13%? A couple of things, right? Some companies are actually subsidizing rates, and I've talked about this before. I know who they are. I'm not going to call them out. That's not what I do here. We safely generate the rates we offer. We don't chase yield irresponsibly. And we also don't subsidize. What do I mean by subsidize? If you're taking the company's money off of your balance sheet and giving it to you, okay, you're doing a couple of things. One, you're creating an unsustainable system, right? Because you're basically giving away free money. Two, you're sending a message that these are the rates that you generate via the lending models that I described, which is actually not true, okay? Or they have some other token that they're actually giving you, right? Which might be okay, but in some cases, it might be an illiquid coin that you can't get rid of. So dig in a little bit as to what's actually going on. And what you'll find, in my opinion, is that Abra represents the safest, highest quality yield that represents a very fair, amazing yield versus the banking systems. I mean, banks are basically paying zero and Abra is paying 8%. Exchanges are paying 0 on crypto, and Abra is paying about 4 to 5% on crypto. It's a phenomenal interest rate. Okay. Somebody asks, my app does not have interest-free loans on it. How come? And as a reminder, Tom, we don't have Abra Borrow live in every state yet. Okay, that means that there are about 6 or 7 states in the U.S. where you can't yet borrow. You can't yet borrow in Canada. That's coming soon. You can't borrow in the UK. I hope that's coming soon. If you see Abra, the borrow at the bottom of the screen, click on it and it'll show you right away what's up. Catherine says, my app is not showing designated beneficiary. Catherine, all you have to do is make sure, one, that you've passed the KYC process, where KYC means know your customer. That's where you uploaded your ID. And then make sure you go to the App Store and download the latest version of the app. We just added the beneficiary capability a couple of weeks ago, so it's possible that you haven't upgraded the app recently. Timothy asks, by the way, you guys always have the best questions. What's good is we're getting different questions now every week, so I think a lot of you are learning. So that's cool. Let me. Pluto, I'll get to your question in a second. So Timothy asks, will compounds be an earn soon? Timothy, I'm actually not sure about that. I'll have to check with my team on that. We don't pre-announce stuff, but I try to, if I know something's definitely coming, like I know Cardano staking is eventually coming, I'll mention it, but I'm actually not sure about compound, which probably means it's not imminent, but we'd certainly love to add it when our partners support it. When I say partners, what I mean is that we actually manage custody through a few different companies, and they need to support those tokens for staking for us in order to pay that staking, which is why Cardano support should be reasonably imminent here. Let's see. Is there a better way to get insight into Abra's risk exposure? How much is in DeFi? So Prince Jindal, that changes on a very regular basis. But I can tell you, like, there's a split between retail lending, DeFi, institutional lending. On the DeFi side, that's where we've really gone the slowest and been the most conservative. So we really dig into, if you know anything about DeFi, we really dig into the contracts, into the code. We test in very small amounts, actually using our money first before we actually dig in with earning yield with depositors' funds. Okay, so that's the answer there. But the amounts fluctuate based upon where that mix between institutional and DeFi generates the best yield for us in a safe way, and also, of course, how much we're doing in consumer loans, because consumer loans is actually the safest because of all the collateral that you all put up to do that. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I'm happy to answer any more questions you have on that. And those are really important questions, because that's the money that we're, and the risk management is a big part of my job personally as CEO. Okay. Christian Voice says, Sir Bill, security on two-factor authentication via Google Authenticator or Authy, when is it coming? So the good news is I saw a demo of this week from our product team. We are launching 2FA for withdrawals, for money send, and a bunch of other features. It is imminent. I saw a really cool demo of it. The team did a great job implementing it. They're finishing testing now. I don't know which exact day, but it is definitely coming. Okay. 2FA, most commonly requested security feature for Abra, is coming very, very soon. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Any update on Flare Spark? I actually asked our trading custody partner on that and they didn't have an answer for me. So I apologize for that. I don't know what's taking so long, but I hope it's coming soon. And again, Catherine asks about the beneficiary feature. You have to upgrade to the latest version of the app. And then you click on the 3-line hamburger menu at the top left. And second from the top, you'll see the beneficiary feature. Okay. If that's unclear to anybody, ask in the questions and I'll demo it again. But I just showed you a few minutes ago. A few of you are asking, asking this again. You must upgrade to the latest version of the app, right? And then click on the menu at the top. And you must also be approved with your ID verification process in order to use that feature, because we can't store the beneficiary unless you've been approved with your ID verification. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Technically, you don't have an account until you're approved. All right. Eric asks, hi, Bill, do Abra have a local bank account in the Philippines? Can we cash in directly to you via our bank account? Eric, yes, there are multiple methods for cashing in the Philippines. I would demo to you, but my app is US based. So if you have the Abra app, there's also on the Abra Philippines Facebook group, people are talking constantly about different methods for cashing in. We have tellers, we have banks, we have tellers that work via banks. So there's lots of methods for cashing in and cashing in directly, and also via partners all throughout Southeast Asia. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Fellowship League asks, how is Abra handling its privacy and security layers for the user? What about hacking and key logging and all the personal information of Abra? Will it be secured? Phenomenal question. Let's break it down. Let's talk about security on multiple levels. Let's talk about what happens on the back end of Abra and then move towards the app on the front end. On the back end, several things are going on, okay? The most important thing is there's no single place to hack, right, to get access to your funds, your crypto, your cash. It's not all stored in one single place, okay? If you're depositing cash via bank wire, for example, in the US or internationally, it lands at our trust bank partner called Prime Trust, which most of you are familiar with because you've provided your IDs in the app and you've seen the Prime Trust reference. They store the cash that immediately gets converted to a stable coin in our system, which is stored somewhere else. So yet, and then we use multi-signature cryptographic techniques for storing crypto via partners like BitGo, like Fireblocks, and other partners like Bittrex. And so there's not one single place for any hacker to go to steal anything. And even if they were to break in, they probably wouldn't find anything anyway, okay? So that's on the back end. On the front end, in terms of using the app, okay, make sure that when you go to Abra, you see that the company name, when you scroll down on iPhone or Google Play Store, is Plutus Financial, which is us. That's Abra. And don't download a lookalike app, because on iPhone, you can't do that, okay? iOS, iPhone, Apple is very, very secure. I've never seen an imitation app on Google, but I've heard about it with other companies. So be careful that you're downloading the right app for Abra. We put the app through what we call a security audit. And so third parties test the app and look for security vulnerabilities. And if they ever find anything, which they haven't for Abra, we would fill those vulnerabilities right away. So things like key logging are not possible, particularly in iOS, where the OS doesn't allow that. And so on Android, make sure you're not rooting or unlocking the phone. Use a branded Android phone from like a Samsung or directly from Google or Motorola, from a reputable brand, and make sure it's not unlocked so that you can't accidentally install some of these key logging things. Abra has no control over that. So make sure you use a locked phone with any financial app, your bank, Abra, other exchanges. Don't unlock or what we call root your phone. Don't do that, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. What's the latest version of Abra? Pluto asks. On the iOS version, it's 101.1, build 4321. And maybe Mr. Wizard, you can post the latest version for Android. I don't have it offhand. I don't have my Android phone turned on right now. Is there, and Ursula asks, is there an Abra Facebook group for Canadians? No, but you can actually post in the main Facebook group, since that's all English. And we'd be happy to have all of our Canadian friends there. As I said, we're rolling out features for Canada for Abra Borrow. You can use Abra Earn and trading from Canada today. It works just fine. And we actually have Interact support for you, Ursula. If you go to abra.com and use the widget from Abra.com, you can actually use Interact Wire to buy Bitcoin that you can deposit into your Abra app. Okay. Hopefully the process there makes sense. I've demoed it before. It's super simple. Paker asks, hey, I remember a long time ago, you said in a conference, I think you have your theories as to who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Can we know? So it's funny. I said this back in 2012, who I thought Satoshi is. My feelings are still the same. I would, even if I knew 100%, I wouldn't tell you. And I don't know 100%, but I have my theories and I have a feeling I'm right. But out of respect, I would never say. And look, I think that ship has sailed. I don't think the public necessarily needs to know who Satoshi is. I think it's great that Bitcoin has no kind of benevolent dictator, and that its best feature is its decentralization. And so the fact that Satoshi is relegated to the background now, and we may never know with 100% certainty, in other words, his keys or her keys may be completely gone, may actually be a good thing. I don't know. All right. But you're not going to get it from me. Let's see. David asks, is it possible to add more than one beneficiary with different percent ownership? Great question. It's something that I wanted as well. Not yet. So if you have multiple beneficiaries, what I would do is I would set up one as kind of the executive or executor of the estate. If you're in the US, if you're familiar with that idea, and then they would be able to distribute the estate for you upon proof of passing. We're waiting for our bank partner to enable multiple beneficiaries with percent ownership, and then we'll add. But in the meantime, what I've done is I've set up that executor, like I talked about. I'm not sure if I'm using the term correctly, but I think you know what I mean. And then that person would be legally responsible for distributing whatever assets they would be given, such as crypto in the case of Abra. And we see here the latest version of the Android app is 101.0, build 920 for Android. So you can check there. And if you don't have the latest version, you can go into the Play Store for Android and update. You should do that anyway on a regular basis, especially with banking and financial apps. Let's see. Lots of questions here. I can't believe we're almost time's up already. So how soon does Abra Earn transfer back into Abra trading? Your terms of service say 7 days, up to 7 days. Can this be done faster? Timothy, great question. On average, okay, if you're transferring, let's say less than a couple of $100,000, you're going to see that balance reflected in Abra Trade the same day, usually within a couple of hours during the week. It may take a little bit longer on the weekends, but during the week for sure, you're going to see it within a couple of hours. If you're transferring, for example, like a couple of $1,000,000, and we have users holding millions of dollars in Abra Earn, it might take a day. Okay, but I've never seen a transfer from Earn to trade take days. I just haven't seen it. It's possible that it could in the future, but honestly, because we're holding so much money and we keep a huge amount of reserves, the deposits and withdrawals are very easy for us to process. Okay, Timothy. So I can tell you the reality is it happens very quickly, but the lawyers have asked us to, make it up to 7 days. So I hope you can appreciate the difference. Christian says, thank you so much for your answer on 2FA. You're very welcome. Something that I've wanted myself. Let me just show you again. I've seen like 15 questions on this beneficiary. So you go to the settings menu, which is on the upper left. And I'm going to share my screen here. So give me a second. And when you share, hold on, give me 1 sec. Let me see. Oh, there it is. I can't, it's not letting me edit. All right, so it's not letting me share right now, but you click on the hamburger, I call it the hamburger menu, which is those 3 lines that look like a hamburger in the top left. And from there, you can, oh, there it is. I can share it now. Okay, so here you see my phone. I'm going to go back to my Abra app. Right. So from here, you see the 3 lines in the top left. I call that the hamburger menu. That's the settings menu. Right. And the second option from the top is the designated beneficiary. OK, so hopefully that makes sense. I'm not going to click on it because I've already got my beneficiary set up and it's personal. So within that, once you click second from the top, designated beneficiary, you should be good to go. All right, let me leave the app open for a minute in case there's any other questions on the demo front. Fellowship Leagues asks, yes, I forgot to answer the part about personal information. Is it secured? Abra itself hardly stores any information about you at all. So it's very secure, but there's also very little information. We tokenize what we can so that even if somebody hacks it, they can't actually easily read it. We've never had a hack at Abra. We've been at this for years. They're trying all the time, but our systems are really locked down. Okay, we're partnered with Amazon and a few other companies in the cloud side. We partner with multiple multi-sig custodians. I have my personal details that I've given to Abra from my wallet. I'm very comfortable. I have a background as well in information security and cryptography. I understand at a pretty good fundamental level how Abra works, and I'm extremely comfortable with it. Darwin says, I've only had positive experiences with Abra support, always prompt and helpful. Thank you for that feedback. They love hearing that. Let's see. How do you stress test upside in Bitcoin? So let's say Bitcoin goes to $100,000 overnight. That wouldn't be bad. And alts go with it. Will that create a problem with some of DeFi positions you've taken? Great question, Gregory. In general, we only enter into DeFi contracts that are liquid, meaning that if for whatever reason we're no longer generating yield that we want, we would simply withdraw our wrapped Bitcoin or our Ethereum or whatever we're holding in that DeFi contract. And it happens all the time. We're testing in small amounts between contracts, and we rebalance on, let's say, a weekly or a monthly basis as different DeFi opportunities come in and out of fruition. Okay. All right. So let's see, we've got some more questions down here. I mentioned already, I already answered that the 2FA for Google Auth support is coming. I saw a demo of it this week. Chester says, do not put dashes in the social security number. I believe that's correct. I believe you shouldn't add dashes there. It's been a while since I set it up, but I believe that's correct. And Benny says that he's had an experience where it takes up to a day and a half. It's possible that if you do it on the weekends, it might take a little longer for the withdrawal. But my personal experience, and I get no preferential treatment, right? The people that are the system processing the withdrawal doesn't know who I am, doesn't know I'm the CEO. I get no preferential treatment. Generally, I've had my transfers take, hours at the most. Okay. But if you do this on the weekend, it is possible that it could take a little bit longer. Is there a minimum age for people to be named as a beneficiary in Abra? Darwin, I don't think so. I believe my beneficiary is over the age of 18, but I don't believe that's a problem. If you put in the age and it doesn't give you an error, you're good to go. Okay, so try it out. I don't even believe it asks you for their age. So I don't think there's any problem with that. Robert asks, what do you think about Wells Fargo shuttering personal lines of credit? And should I max out my homeowner's line of credit to buy Bitcoin? So I have a pretty strong visceral reaction to people borrowing against their homes to buy crypto. Okay. I would discourage this, especially if you're in a position where a loan could be called, or if financially you might be living month to month. This is a dangerous thing because remember, Bitcoin is short-term volatile. On average, it's been going up 200% a year, but that doesn't mean we can't have 6 to 15 month scenarios where it's down 50, 60%. Okay, but on average, it's going up 200% a year. So you don't want to be in a position where you're underwater on an asset that you've borrowed against your home for, right? I mean, that's a very risky, dangerous thing to do. So don't leverage yourself that way. Leave that to the hedge funds. You as consumers should invest a percentage of your assets in crypto. Don't over leverage yourself to invest in Bitcoin. I know a lot of people, you see Michael Saylor borrowing other people's money or other companies' money, but Michael is not personally leveraging himself to buy Bitcoin. The company is borrowing funds via bonds. It's a very different proposition from us as consumers leveraging ourselves and borrowing money to buy crypto. In general, I would say if you have crypto and you want to borrow a small amount through Abra Borrow, where you're basically putting up a fair amount of collateral, that's okay. I would say that's a little less risky because you already have the collateral. You have assets that are in crypto already, but don't borrow against your home. I would discourage that. Okay. So we'll cut to the chase there. Can you talk a little bit about recent concerns stablecoins are over leveraged? So Victor, so two different phenomenon going on here. The stablecoin creation themselves, if they're based in the US, and the US based stablecoins are Paxos, which is probably the smallest, USDC from Circle, which went public or announced that they're doing a SPAC yesterday, True USD, and then the one that's based outside the US is Tether. Now, all four of these are now doing public disclosures. Certainly the three US-based stablecoins must disclose their bank holdings to bank regulators in the states where they're licensed. This is good for you because banks actually leverage themselves massively with your money. Okay, that's what you may have heard this term, fractional reserve banking. That just means the banks are allowed to use your money to leverage themselves. Stablecoin issuers in the US are not allowed to do that. They must maintain a minimum of 1-to-1 reserves between the USDC, the True USD, or the Paxos, and actual dollars in the bank account. Okay. Now, Tether originally was not doing that, but they agreed in a settlement with the New York State regulator that they would start disclosing the bank holdings underpinning Tether. Now, I'm not an expert in those holdings. I haven't looked at them. I don't use Tether, but that's what they said. Okay. So that's the actual creation of the stablecoin itself. All right. Now, if you're running a hedge fund, okay, and you want to leverage yourself in dollars, you're right, you can create leverage, but that has nothing to do with the actual existence of the stablecoin, which in some ways is more secure, right, than the way the banks normally work with your funds, because they are leveraging themselves using your money. So I hope that makes sense. And that's why I'm a big fan of USDC, True USD, Paxos, because as US-based entities that are regulated, right, they do have to disclose those bank holdings. Now, that's not a decentralized solution, right? It uses a decentralized system like Ethereum to give you a tokenized dollar, but you're trusting that the regulators are doing their jobs. That's why Bitcoin wins long-term, because it's completely decentralized and there's no trust required in using it. But as an interim step, these stable coins are very important, and we still rely on these bank regulators to tell us that the money is actually there. Okay, and I'm glad they're there. Okay, all right. So let's see. We're running out of time here. Let's see. So Paker talks about your phone is always vulnerable to hack. Computer always vulnerable to hack. Absolutely. So I'm a big fan of iPhone because it has better security than Android. Do not root your Android phone. Do not do it. Do not use unbranded Android phones that you don't trust, okay? Use a branded phone that's locked down. Let's see. So hopefully that answered Victor's questions on stablecoins. Stanford asks, how soon do I think it'll take for the global economy to become Bitcoin or crypto-centric? So this is a really interesting question. I think this is going to happen in stages. I'm seeing two phenomenon right now that are phenomenal. I'm seeing people in developing markets, right? Many of you on here are from Southeast Asia, maybe the Philippines or Indonesia. We have people here from Guatemala, I see El Salvador. We have people here from the Middle East and India. All of you have seen devaluations of your currencies over many, many years. You've seen it multiple times, okay? Irresponsible governments that don't actually have the global fiat reserve currency have limited ability to manage their currency. So these devaluations happen. And so you don't trust your government. You may trust the dollar more than you trust your home currency, the peso, for example. But in general, you have a problem with government issued currency. So Bitcoin is very appealing. And then the other group that we see a lot of in Abra now is this ultra high net worth investor who might be putting hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars into Bitcoin using Abra. You're using the same app to do it. And your perspective is that I have a lot of wealth to protect, and I think the dollar is going to shit long term. And I think I need to have 10% of my wealth in Bitcoin. Okay. So a little bit of an overlapping narrative. I think long term, this meets in the middle with the average kind of middle class consumer who, probably is a little bit more skeptical because they're, used to the government always being the backstop. The government prints more money to get us out of these, deflationary cycles like we had last year. Okay, which is unsustainable long term. So I think that you're going to see more of this adoption at the extremes, right? Developing markets, wealthy. You're going to see corporate treasuries starting to put money into Bitcoin, like we saw Tesla do. Elon Musk's comments aside, Tesla treasury is still holding $1.5 billion of Bitcoin. Abra holds a significant amount of Bitcoin for our own treasury, not just your funds. Square, PayPal. You're going to start to see a lot of these companies move treasury as early adopters. I predict you're going to see Facebook, Google, Apple, who are holding hundreds of billions of dollars in cash, move some of this over. Okay. And this is going to take 15, 20 years, but in banking terms, that's really fast. So you're going to see the sea shift towards a crypto-centric banking system over the next couple of decades. And look, we had no internet 25 years ago, no consumer internet, I should say, right? And over the last 25 years, our entire lives have become internet-centric. The entire planet, minus the very bottom of the income pyramid, has become internet-centric. The smartphone before Bitcoin was the fastest growing technology in history. Now Bitcoin, by the way, is the fastest growing technology in history. And that's leading towards this kind of multi-decade process of us becoming crypto-centric. That's why I do what I do, okay? I believe we're on the front lines of migrating the world towards a crypto-centric perspective. Let's see. Sean says, I missed 2 of his questions. So Sean, I apologize. I've got hundreds of questions here. I'm actually looking at multiple feeds. If you want to ask your question again at the bottom, I will try to get to it. And is it possible to have coins confiscated from wallets in general? In general, that is not possible. You're holding a private key to those funds, which you can easily recreate in another Abra wallet. If you're a criminal and we get a subpoena, for example, from the FBI, in general, lawyers will look at that, go back and forth. We've never had that happen at Abra, to my knowledge. Okay, I can't say it would never happen, but in general, it's not like a simple stored value system. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and you have this private key that we allow you to use to recreate your wallet. So while we are managing custody, we give you a reasonable amount of control when you're basically using Abra Trade. Once you go to Abra Earn and Abra Borrow, you're definitely using us for custody in order to generate that yield. Okay. So Sean, please feel free to ask those 2 questions. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Derek asks, will Abra work in the Bahamas? Absolutely. We have lots. I have friends that live in the Caribbean that use Abra. Thanks, Bill. Victor says the risk is that stable coins are not FDIC insured like bank deposits. That's not totally true. So if you're using TrueUSD or USDC, my understanding is that the funds that are stored in the bank underlying those deposits are insured. The problem is that those are corporate deposits. And so as a large deposit, the FDIC insurance only applies up to a certain amount, right? You can't get FDIC insurance for $100 million worth of bank deposits. FDIC insurance doesn't work that way, okay? So that's a misunderstanding. Not every penny stored in a bank account is FDIC insured. Let me repeat that. Not every penny stored in a US bank account is FDIC insured. There are limits on how much the bank is willing to insure for individuals, for couples, for companies. I'm not an expert on how it works for companies, but I know it's not 100%. Okay, so there's no such thing. All right, Pluto 5028 asks, how can I work for Abra? So we list our job openings on abra.com, on LinkedIn, and I believe there's a jobs email that you can respond to, and we get applications, lots of applications every day. We're growing like crazy right now. James asks again, when will Abra Borrow be available in California? We addressed this earlier. Hopefully soon. Our lending license is pending. I live in California. I want it as soon as possible. Sean asks, does Abra offer IPOs? I think you mean IPO shares. I'm not really sure what that means. So I think the answer to your question is no. We don't sell stock in Abra to the public, but yeah. So hopefully that's it. Look, it's 10 a.m. I'm already tired. I've been talking nonstop. So many questions today. Thank you for that. Those of you who may have missed some questions, we're getting some repeated questions. So go back and watch the live stream. You'll see it on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Discord. By the way, click subscribe in the feed. That really helps promote Abra, okay, across all the channels. Follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, follow our multiple groups on Facebook. We have a fantastic Facebook group as well. We're constantly asking questions there. You don't have to wait until next week to get your questions answered, okay? So have a wonderful weekend. And looks like we may get a little bit of a run up here. I don't know. We'll see what happens with Bitcoin. We've stabilized at about 33.5 over the last couple of hours, but we had a nice run up the last few hours to recover a little bit. I don't know. I'm feeling a little bullish right now. We're still range bound, but we'll see what happens. All right. Have a great weekend. Keep your questions coming via the normal support channels. We will see you next week on